Amy Stockman. We have Amy on tonight. And if you guys want to give the community updates during your roll call, that's fine as well. Angela. Brad?
Yep, I'm here. Nothing to report.
Cynthia? Her on. Connie?
Yeah, present, nothing to report.
Dan Brown?
Dan's here, nothing to report.
Danielle Burlingame? Gail Manswitz? Gail Dugan? Jason Legowski?
I am here and nothing to report.
Joe?
Same here.
John? Lois?
Good evening. I'm here. Nothing to report.
Hey,
Like
Kelly, I'm here. Nothing to report. Kelly, I think John Brees is here. I see his name at least. And John, if you're trying to talk, we don't hear you. So it might be that. Yep. But we know you're here, so that's good.
McIntosh? Mary Blanchard?
I am here, and we are going to try to set up a meeting with the new site lead for the Falk Road landfill dump coming up shortly. Thank you.
Grande? Pam? Patty, she sent an email saying she probably wasn't going to be able to join. Portia? Richard Burns? Visky?
Here, nothing to report.
Thank you. Tamara? Sandy?
I'm here and there's nothing to report.
Stacy?
Yep, I'm here, and we do have a new site lead. I've been in contact with him. He's on vacation till later this month. He is willing to meet with us, but he says he must also stay in his lane. The neighbors on Bush Lake got more PFAS foam than they've ever seen before, have photographed it. We forwarded it on to people, and that's where we're at.
Teresa? Tony?
Tony just texted me and said he can't make it.
Okay, and I see Teresa's logged on, but she must not be able to unmute.
And Bill Barnett.
Hello.
Oh, Teresa.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Can you guys hear me now? Hello?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay, I'm here. Nothing to report.
So I'm here, bringing out the bottom, Bill Barnett. I just want to thank Eagle and Sandy and everybody that was at the PFAS resource and solution fair we had in our city park. It was all hands on deck. All the governments were there. It was a good collaboration, a great collaboration, and it was tremendous community outreach. And thank you, Sandy, and everybody else from Eagle and all the groups that joined together for a common purpose and availed themselves to a greater community and gave another means for people to get information. So that was really wonderful. I want to report on that. Apparently Eagle has expanded a zone in Herring Township this week, and we appreciate that. And it's good to see as a densely populated area north of Cadillac, and it's being looked at. So that was really good news. It's a great confidence builder for the community that we have a teamwork approach and that the state's there for us. So thank you. Those are my updates.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool event. It was great to see everybody there, and vendors from all over the place were there. So it kind of be a neat thing if communities want to look at that, to do that. I'm thinking of Holly or some other places that it was just kind of a nice summer event, and it worked out well to have it with a farmer's market nearby. So people were already walking through, and it was a great way to give out information. And so it's kind of fun. It's hot, but it was kind of fun. So, all right. All right, so that's our updates. We had talked last week about having a PFAS awareness week, and I wanted to make sure we continued that discussion. So I'm looking at you, Rick, and I think there were people from Eagle that were working on this too, or looking for dates or something. So take it away.
I was wondering if anyone from MDHHS looked at some possible dates. We talked about the 3rd or the 4th week of March as being some good dates. And has anybody contacted the governor about that, or?
Yeah, I can take that one, Rick. So
Okay.
we haven't made it all the way to EOG's office yet. We have to put together a comms plan and a couple other things, a justification for it and stuff. Also double checking on the dates that you proposed to make sure that there's no overlapping proclamation weeks that are on. So still working on that stuff. Haven't made it all the way up to EOG's office or anything yet. So still working on it though.
Do you think you'll have that done? Do you think you'll have it done by next month?
I can check and get back to you next month. I'm not too sure where she's at, where my person who's working on it is at with it, but I know it's rounding the corner. I don't think it's too far. It's just got to make it up management chain and then do it. So if you want, I can send you an email sooner if that works.
Yeah, the next thing, of course, is to start getting some planning committees together. So I was thinking about several. One is a sponsors committee. Of key NGOs, nonprofits that want to help sponsor the event. So, I was thinking, Huron River Watershed Council, GL Plan, maybe LCV, maybe Tip of the Mitt. I think we can. There's certainly some representatives here, but we can reach out to some other groups. And I think the sooner we can get a date, the better we can, start getting sponsors together. But, do I have volunteers for a sponsor committee?
I'll help with that, Rick.
Okay.
I'm pretty good at being annoying, and people will pay me to get out of their way. So to leave their office. So.
Okay. So anybody else want to be on the sponsorship committee? I guess, Dan, do you think the Huron River Watershed Council would be interested in having a major role in this? And, I don't want to define what major role is, but, being a significant player in organizing this.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for HRWC, but but I think certainly we'd be interested in being have a prominent role in some way for sure.
Okay.
And I can tell you, I'm pretty sure Great Lakes PFAS Action Network would be more than happy to play a big, role. So.
Okay.
And I'll help. This is Jason. I'll help the team.
Great. All right. And then we need a content committee because there's local event content and we need to provide Eagle with some guidance. And Abby, do you think that there's a possibility of a one-day Eagle event that people could log into and get presentations like on fish and blood testing? I think is a big one.
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure that out.
Okay.
I think that would be, that's easy enough for us to, especially if we have a date set aside, we can do one day and have our Eagle Environmental Assistance Center help us with all the webinar stuff so we can, make it as nice as the PFAS summit that we do.
Yeah. And I know you use Wahuva a lot for your for the presentations. Is that expensive? I'm sure there's a cost for it.
There is a cost. It depends on how many people you expect to attend that the cost goes down, I guess. I can ask and see what we're spending. I know that with the minimal cost that we charge for our PFAS summit, we break even every year with licensing. So I don't remember what the licensing is per person. If you do if you say you're going to do 500 people or something like that, I can ask them and see what the pricing would be.
Yeah, because I think some of the local events may want to have maybe appropriate for a broader audience too. So, yeah, so, we need to provide Eagle with some guidance and MDHHS with some guidance about what kind of content would be appropriate. And we should think about not only individuals, but also local units of government. And there's a lot of, more rural townships that are having to deal with this and contaminated wells and the fact that there's no infrastructure to provide water to these people. So I think we could have a mix of those two kinds of contents there. So that's one type of content. And then, I'm very interested in hearing from communities about what people would be interested in having locally. And some ideas would be to have a resource fair like up in Cadillac. I mean, that might be appropriate for certain places. Others would be maybe connecting with a local university to get a speaker and then having a broader dialogue. I know we were talking in the Grand Rapids area of potentially having a showing of dark waters and then putting a panel discussion together and opening that up for people to view the movie and then be able to interact with some technical people, some local people that have been exposed, and just have a nice discussion about the impact of PFAS on local communities. So and you could be showing No Defense up in in Oscoda, or maybe have maybe have a rental of that movie and having it appear at different places. I know Michigan MEC was potentially talking about doing that for the dark waters and then having different showings at different nights or something. So but I'd like to get an idea about content and not only content for the MPART, but content for the local events. So does anybody want to serve on that committee? I'm certainly interested in that, and I would like a few more volunteers for that, especially in communities in the Detroit area, communities in the Upper Peninsula. I don't know what's happening up in Pellston, but there's a lot of communities scattered across the state. Lapeer, I don't know if they need any kind of would they benefit from presentations, but I'd like to try and reach out to as many communities as I can. And I certainly can reach out to university contacts and make sure that they have some kind of event that's open to the public. But I'm really interested in looking at communities that you know, don't have anybody that's come to talk to them and could benefit from you know, a local expert or an expert coming in, or you know, a video a Zoom presentation, or just some kind of a panel discussion for Q&A. So
I'm really bad with event planning generally, but I know enough of the U of M network and the PFAS interest around, you know, the Ann Arbor Huron watershed that I think I could wrangle enough people to come up with ideas for that. And a lot of folks in GLPAN are around this area as well. So Rob Kerr knows a lot of this, and we've done similar things that were just one-offs, but could roll them into a, you know, more cohesive program.
Yeah, and this isn't, you know, necessarily organization. It's just brainstorming on content. So we'll you know, try and, you know, connect the right people with, you know, once we understand the contact. So no, I appreciate that, Dan. Mary, did you have your hand up?
Yep, I was gonna offer to join in on that as well.
Excellent. Okay. All right, there's a lot of you know, members that COG members that aren't here, so I'll send out emails about these two committees and see if we can get some people that, you know, aren't in attendance. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about this, and I've had some discussions with Calvin College about having maybe a kind of a summit meeting in Grand Rapids and bringing in, you know, engineers and the real estate community and just having a dialogue about PFAS and what we can do. Because I think the more local resources we can put together, the better off we'll be, just because of the, you know, the current political climate in Washington. I think we can, you know, try and band together, and there's local resources, and you know, every community's got certain strengths. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this, and I'd like to do whatever I can to make it happen. I'm glad we've got some, you know, very solid team members here for it. So.
And it would be great to have the geographic distribution of events. So, you know, not just
I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah. Not just Marquette, but, you know, you've got Menominee, you've got Sault Ste. Marie, you got the whole UP that we need to be able to cover as well.
Yeah. And since I have a Michigan Tech affiliation now, I've already talked to the mothership up in Houghton about this, and they're interested. So yeah, I need to talk with Lake Superior State, and but yeah, I think we can put together. And there's, you know, even if there's not a major university, there's community colleges like in Ludington, and you know, I'm sure we can find some or northern Michigan. What's the one, Northwestern and Traverse City, whatever that one is.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I'm sure we can find community colleges that are willing to participate too. And you know, it's the watershed center up in Traverse City. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about trying to pull this together.
And I think we could get started on planning even if we don't have a date yet. I mean, I think a lot of this. So are there other committees besides sponsorship and content that you think we need to, or should we just get started with those two?
Yeah, I think we can get started with those two, and then we'll kind of take it from there, because I'm sure there's going to be local committees, you know, that will pop up, and we'll need to coordinate with them.
Right.
But I would like to get some sponsors, and you know, there's annual meetings by the you know, the different water and environment federations and things like that, and you know, it'd be nice to get some sponsorships from engineers and, you know, other water and environmentally related groups, because PFAS is, you know, affecting fish now, and there's a lot of conservation groups that I think would be interested to get involved. So you know, it's just a good way to bring the issue to the public's eye. Yeah. So.
And I'll check. And Bill, you could check. I know Cadillac did quite a job at finding a lot of different companies and engineering groups that are working on remediation and filtration. And I would bet we can get them to participate. If not, probably get them to do some sponsorship, but also maybe participate in some summits or some virtual things or something. So.
No, and we have,
Yeah,
I was going to say, we have in Grand Rapids, Prine and Newhoff and Fishbeck and Williams and Works. I mean, we have no shortage of engineers and people in labs that do the testing. So yeah, I think we can get sponsorships.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah, anybody that's working on sort of larger infrastructure projects that are in the wet. So any of those engineering firms that have an environmental engineering focus, ECT, Limnotech, the list goes on. Yep.
Yeah. No, if you could kind of handle some of the, groups on the east side, I think I've got good contacts on the west side, and yeah.
Okay.
Super. Excited about it.
Yeah. So look at your calendars, kids. Everybody look for time to participate in this. I think it's good. All right. Anything else on PFAS week we got to talk about? Stay tuned. One thing really quick, so I don't forget, because I'm forgetting everything right now, is we had talked, typically we have not met in August in CAGs or COGs or anything because it's end of summer and we're trying to squeeze out the last bit of good days. Is there any concern with us not having a COG meeting in August? Would that upset anyone? Are there any reasons we need to have a COG meeting in August?
I suppose, Sandy, we could always do an email update if there's anything major that comes up during August, as far as from the Eagle MPART side. We could always just do an email update to the group if something huge comes up.
Okay. Unless I hear something, and if you think of a reason why we really do need to meet, let me know. But I just think if it doesn't hurt us to take some time off once in a while. So if people have a concern with that, let me know. But let's plan on starting back up in September. Okay, so let's talk about fish.
We're actually going to do, if you don't mind, the
oh, I can't hear you.
Education, engagement, and outreach.
You've gone a little quiet there, Kelly.
Yeah. You're up, Harry. That's what she's saying. You're up, Harry.
That sounds good.
Harry's in charge of our PFAS community education, engagement, and outreach. But Harry, take it away.
Yeah. I also do work on the Eat Safe Fish program as well. So looking forward to connecting about that. But today I'm going to give a bit of an overview about the community education engagement and outreach section within the Environmental Health Bureau and the ways that this section actually interfaces with PFAS sites and does PFAS work, right? So a little bit of a peek behind the scenes of the work that we do to engage folks, provide education, provide outreach, and also some of the newer processes that we've been working on that might be in a little bit of flux, but we're looking to be implementing as things move forward for PFAS sites. So it's been a long time coming, so I'm really excited to share. And so I'm Harry. I think I've been to a few of these meetings before. I've met a lot of you. I know some of you quite well as well. But I'm the Program Community Engagement Coordinator for PFAS and Eat Safe Fish. And so my role is to support our regional teams and think about statewide engagement for, in this case, the PFAS program. So you can reach me at that email and that phone number, but feel free to reach out with any questions following the presentation and things today. And so the topics that I'll kind of be touching on today are going to involve who we are, our regional community engagement model as well, a overview of the education portion of what we do, the community engagement part, which is more where I come in and our regional teams, and then a brief mention of outreach and the outreach team as well, just to show who the main pieces as part of the team are, what we do, and then what that looks like in terms of PFAS work. So I'm sure you're all familiar with MPART and site teams. The MDHHS portion of that also has its own, I guess, sub-team for a lot of PFAS sites too. And that we're focused, primarily on the health portion of response, but we involve a lot of different players as part of the MDHHS team, which includes folks like our toxicologists, community engagement, the folks like geologists, epidemiologists, as well as health educators as well, which I'll mention in a minute. And so all of this packaged together as a smaller team that then slots into the whole MPART framework for that side of the site response. Next slide, if that's okay. So that's a lot of pieces. That's a lot of people. So just to break down exactly what the organization side of things looks like, we have all of the different sections on the right-hand side, ranging from all of the different topics that might be involved with environmental health as part of the state. But here on the left-hand side is the community education and outreach section, it's run by our section lead, Chris Finch. But then we have a few different functions and units or sub-units underneath that. So you'll hear a lot of terms, and I just want to show what that breakdown looks like, where we have education, we have community engagement, and then we have community outreach. And then also within community engagement, we have another layer of division when it comes to regionalization. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides to help illustrate what that break looks like, why it exists, and kind of how it practically interfaces with PFAS specifically. So that's a quick look at things. Next slide, please. So regionalization. So I'm a program CE. I'm assigned to a particular topic area, so PFAS and eat safe fish. And so I work across the state on helping to help with education and engagement for those programs. We also have a regional framework, and this might be familiar to a lot of you, so I'm sorry if it's something that's been repeated in the past. But each region across the state is based on the emergency preparedness regions. And each of them will have one community engagement coordinator and one outreach technician for each of those areas. And they live, work in, and have a personal connection to the regions that they serve. And that's a really valuable thing, is that they're really embedded in their communities. They work to understand them and be to help be the voice for that community, right? Be a bit of a representative when it comes to the engagement portion of our response for the state. So these are the folks who would actually be involved in site work. So if a site popped up in region 6, for example, the ones assigned to the site team would be the regional community engagement coordinator for site 6. And so they would have specific knowledge about what's going on in the local community, local organizations, networks to connect with and help spread information, or other nuances and pieces of strategy that folks like me, who are based more in Lansing and are kind of statewide, might not know all of the nuance and local information. And so these regional folks, they aren't tied to a particular topic, and so they represent all of the programs within EHB. So not just PFAS, they'll be the ones working on lead, or helping to spread messaging for climate change adaptation, or all kinds of different topics. They are really the ones who are the representatives for the Bureau within their communities. I can share also as well the contact details for each of the regional CEs. We have a little flyer that explains their role and gives you the contact details for each of them too. All right, and so that's the regional portion, but we also have that separation that I mentioned before by role. So we have the health educators at the top, and if you remember Brandon, who was on a lot of these meetings in the past, he was a health educator, and they're the ones developing strategic health messaging, fact sheets, thinking about those big picture communications. And then below that, we have us, my folks, and community engagement of building relationships and helping to raise awareness and think about how we take those materials and actually get them out to our communities. And also finding opportunities to share public health information as well. A big part of our role is trying to build connections with organizations, figuring out events to attend, all of that kind of stuff. And then at the bottom of this pyramid, we have our community outreach team. And these are the ones who are attending tablings, events. They're experts on communicating face-to-face with the public, right? All of us might attend events at some points, but community outreach are really the ones who are showing up every day. Their whole job is to attend events and interface with the public. And so the purpose of this model is to really be proactive about raising awareness and educating folks about health hazards. And it has some benefits in helping to identify hazards in the community. You know, if we have community outreach at an event, someone will come up to the table and might share a concern they have, and that gives a two-way flow of information that can really help our ability to respond. We also are able to build networks over time. We're a consistent face showing up in the community, helping to build trust, but also build relationships that can stand over time. You know, it's not someone who just kind of appears, you know, quickly for a particular topic or reason and then disappears once that's done. This framework is really designed so that we have consistent people in the community building those relationships over time. And we feel that earning the trust of community members is really key for helping to reduce racial and ethnic health disparities too. It's just really important to be building that trust, to be someone who can be a resource to the community. And it helps us to equitably direct resources as well. It helps us to understand the communities and in turn be able to respond in a way that is tailored to local needs. Next slide. All right, and so to dive a little bit more into health education, I won't take too long on some of these portions, particularly if I'm personally not a health educator, so I don't want to speak too much to outside of my area of expertise. But the health educators, like Brandon, would or do assist in the development of those communication protocols, education campaigns, enrollment efforts for projects, some of that strategic communication work. They're really experts on best practices for health and risk communication in ways that other members of the team might not be. I really enjoy working with the health education team because they're just extremely knowledgeable. They tailor communications, they summarize scientific information from our more technical members of the team, and then they create material for public consumption as well. And they also collaborate quite a lot. You know, naturally they're not just kind of in one silo. They also work with the toxicologists in order to understand the technical health information. Same with epidemiologists, but then the health educators also work with us in community engagement or the folks in outreach to make sure that they're hearing the same things that we might be experiencing or hearing from members of the public on the ground, that is being represented in the more strategic aspects of what they're doing or in the development of fact sheets, things like that. So again, making sure that there's that two-way flow of information and collaboration. And then they collaborate with all the state entities, as well as some collaboration with outside partners too, like community partners and leaders, community members, or in cases if there's like a education campaign or something, they might work with advertising agencies or something to help facilitate getting the message out there. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's a big summary, and now I'm going to briefly talk about how community engagement interfaces with PFAS site response. And this is the stuff that's a little bit newer, so you might not have seen it with sites up until now, and some of it from this point might also change and evolve as we try things out or kind of learn as we go a little bit. But I wanted to give an overview of where things are at right now, and hopefully share what's important to us moving forward. And so our role in community engagement is to help with information sharing between the Bureau, communities, and organizations, and then to help build trust to improve public health outcomes. And that's kind of in two prongs for when it comes to site response, is that we, the regional folks, they will take their local information, their expertise, they'll gather information about community demographics, key partners, things that they know from being embedded in the community, to help to understand things that might impact the engagement portion of site response. Example could be like they might be aware of a language barrier that they can then raise as part of the site team to be like, hey, we need to make sure that we're producing fact sheets that are in a local language, or things like that. They're really there to help advocate and also understand the community that we're working to serve. And then from that, they will develop a community engagement plan. And this can look very different from site to site, depending on those needs, with some general buckets, which I'll explain in a minute, falling under the engagement of residents, people who are directly impacted, the community as a whole of helping to improve awareness around PFAS, and then collaborating with partner organizations to attend events, share materials, all of that kind of stuff as well. And next slide. Right, and so these are the kind of three buckets that I mentioned. We try not to be too prescriptive because every community is going to be different, but this is an example of some of the common areas that we might focus on for the regional Cs as they're developing their engagement plan. And so they will focus on helping to support the wider MPART efforts of communicating about health concerns. If there's a town hall for a site, for example, the regional CEs and often outreach folks as well will work to attend those, bring fact sheets, support them in other ways that might be necessary, and just making sure that there are as much resources as possible going to help the information side of the community for events and meetings. There might be some assistance in things like phone calls, or maybe even mailings, like if there's a flyer that needs to go out for a community meeting, the regional CEs might be involved in that. And then we come into this second bucket, which is a lot more general. So it's not just the people who might be directly impacted, folks who are being sampled, but the wider community as well. And this can, again, vary depending on community needs. But it's all about educating and increasing awareness of PFAS among the community. And so that can involve coordinating attendance at outreach events, distributing educational materials, or networking with community partners, perhaps even doing availability sessions of helping the MDHHS side of the team maybe set up a table at a library or something like that to answer questions, or anything to try and help improve awareness among the community about PFAS. And then we have a kind of a general bucket that anything that doesn't fit into those other ones can fall into. And this is really where things come in for those site-specific needs, like language barriers, for example, or internet access, or anything that could impact people's ability to access information. All right, next slide. So that's what goes into the plan. And I'll try and speed through this last bit. I realize I'm taking a little while now, but the CE plan is drafted by the regional coordinator. Once they're happy with it, it's shared with that little bubble of MDHHS site team for feedback and collaboration. And then the aim is to then share it more widely as well with other folks as part of like the MPART team or the local health department. Folks who might have additional perspective about the site can help to highlight things that might be missing or things that might need to be adjusted. That's really where that comes in. Particularly the local health department can be really valuable at this stage as well. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so you've got the creation of a plan, and then you move into implementation of actually doing the thing. And so, like I mentioned, it can involve attending tablings, open houses, supporting town hall events, all of that kind of stuff. But really, I think one thing that I think we want to emphasize is that engagement should really be ongoing, of regularly checking in with communities, making sure that they have what they need, past maybe the initial flurry of an investigation. That's really important to us, of making sure that there's opportunities for continued touch points, even if it's something that's not super regular, but just making sure that communities know that we're present and available to share more information long term. Okay, next slide, please. Also want to briefly mention tribal nation engagement. That's really important as well. You know, it can happen where PFAS sites might pop up and are impacting tribal nations. And with that, we will coordinate with the tribal liaison here at MDHHS. And their office is responsible for that information and engagement portion. That's not something that is directly done by those of us in community engagement, but we will support the liaison in their efforts, making sure that we regularly communicate updates to them and work to tailor response based on their input and how they're communicating with tribal nations as well. Then next slide. All right, and then this one is community outreach. I have a couple of bullet points here, but that's not to indicate that their role is small by any means. They're honestly some of the most important parts of the work that we do. As you can see in the pictures, they're the folks who are really showing up physically in the community, doing the tablings, all of the things like that. And you know, those of us in engagement and health educators as well, we attend events. But these are the folks, like I said, who do this every day, and they're really the face of our work. They meet residents exactly where they are, and once again, they represent a range of programs, just like the regionals, not just PFAS, but you know, they'll attend filter distributions, health fairs, all kinds of stuff. If you see a tablecloth with our logos and things on it, it's going to be the outreach team 9 times out of 10. So. All right, and I think there might be 1 or 2 slides. Oh, and that's it. So that's kind of it from me. I just wanted to share some details about where things are at. Again, some of this is quite new and might not be fully implemented yet, or it might be subject to change moving forwards. But just wanted to share some of the things that we're working on and our priorities moving forwards. So thanks for letting me talk.
Great. So I want to make sure I didn't meet someone and forget. This is like moving forward. This is like the new thing. I take it, right? Not something that's been going on.
Some portions of it, so like the regional framework, have existed for a little while. Absolutely, like outreach team and things like that. The newer stuff is more.
Abby, help me. Have I met these outreach team in our region?
Yeah, you have.
Oh, Yost, I know Yost.
Yost is your toxicologist. And I'm trying to think of names because Harry would have to bring up the names for me
Okay.
because
That's
there's a
all right.
lot of them.
But I love the idea. I think it's great moving forward. Besides Yost, I couldn't think of people. All right.
There's-
Any questions for Harry? It's quite extensive.
And I think it would be a good idea for Harry to post the names of those different roles in the chat if he's got the list, because I think it would be good for.
That would be really good so people can find out which region and know who they're going to connect with. Perfect. Yeah.
I think so. Perfect. Jocelyn?
Yeah, one thing I did just want to add to is that, you know, I know a lot of the folks here on this call are part of organizations and stuff, Sandy, like you with Great Lakes Action Network and stuff. And our community engagement regional folks, they are kind of your point person, depending on where you're at within the state, where if you want to get materials like within your organization and stuff, they're a good person to reach out to. If you want to have DHHS come do a presentation like at a library or something in your community, that's also the person to reach out to, and we can schedule something with you guys on that. So if there's things that you guys want to, you know, engage with and bring to your community, these are the folks. I posted something in the link that has names for the different regions and stuff. So those are good points of reference for you, especially when you're thinking about the PFAS Awareness Week and the proclamation and stuff coming up next year and stuff, if you want to do it more closer to your community. So.
Yeah, so that's in the chat. Perfect. So if there's contact people that everybody in each region can look for, that would be really helpful, I think, to have rather than trying to just globally reach out to MDHHS. So perfect. All right, other questions?
And I know they've shared information to Mary for some of her meetings and for, I think, even Gail for the stuff through Otsego for that meeting. So yeah, we've worked with these people. You just didn't know their official title.
Well, I was thinking more like our Rockford tag. That's what I'm thinking of. Like, like the Wolverine site.
Yes.
Yost always comes to our meetings, but
I'll have to think about it.
Okay. Maybe Rick knows him. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm at. All right. Thank you, Harry. That was wonderful. All right. Now we're talking about fish.
Now we're talking about fish, and I'm going to attempt, Kelly, I'm going to attempt to share my screen because I, like any good presenter, added 4 slides at the last second. So we will see. I think I can do this. Sandy, are you seeing my title slide? Okay. Perfect. Okay, then I'm going to jump right into it. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about the Michigan Fish Consumption Advisory Program. It's MFCAP, better known as the Eat Safe Fish Program, pretty much around the state of Michigan. I'm talking a little bit about the 2025 guide updates that you may have all heard about by now. It got a lot of publicity, as well as just a little bit, this is what I added, just a little bit about the history of the Eat Safe Fish Program for those of you that may just need a refresher on it. A couple things here. This is the mission of the Eat Safe Fish Program, and the mission is to use a science-based approach, that's important, to educate and inform recreators that choose to catch and eat fish from Michigan water bodies. So breaking this down, what this tells you is that it's not a regulatory program. These are not public health orders. They're not restrictions. This is advice. This is recommendations we're making so that you can look at the water bodies you're choosing to fish in and decide whether or not you want to eat the fish and how much fish to eat. And you can use these guides to find lakes that might have less chemical contaminants than other lakes in the state of Michigan. We do get sometimes some pushback from commercial fishers that are saying it's hurting the industry. This is not anything to do with commercial fishing. This is for recreators and recreators only. And like I said, it's guidelines, it's advice, not restrictions. So this program really goes back to 1970. So we're talking 55 years ago when the first recommendation about, or I should say consumption advice was given. This was based on a muskie that was caught in the St. Clair River that had very high levels of mercury. And so you can see here in this little picture, there was actually an executive order that was put out back in 1970 that banned fishing in the St. Clair River and Lake St. Clair based on mercury contamination. I don't quite know when we started doing the Great Lakes consumption guidelines, but the farthest thing I could find was in 1977. This is a picture of the DNR fishing guide. On the very back page, you can see that the Michigan Department of Public Health recommends certain fish in the Great Lakes have consumption reduced based on PCBs, mercury, and DDT. Now, this was from 77, so we're talking still 35 years before we even started looking at PFAS in the Great Lakes fish. Jumping a little more recently, this is the, and this one here is the current statewide fish guidelines. These began in 1989 when we realized mercury was more prevalent across the state of Michigan and that we wanted to put a blanket advisory for mercury out there across the state. And so to this day, we do have statewide safe fish guidelines. So if you don't find your lake or your species in the guidebooks, it doesn't mean you can eat, thousands of pounds of it a year. You should still consider that all fish out there are going to have some sort of mercury in them. So use our statewide guidelines if you don't see your lake listed in the Eat Safe Fish guides. And then the last thing I added was this slide here. I just want to acknowledge Eagle's fish contaminant monitoring program. They sample thousands of fish each year. That data is then sent to the MDHHS, where our toxicologists can evaluate the different chemicals that are in those samples and make our recommendations on fish consumption. Now, there are 7 different chemical suites that we look at. We look at DDT, selenium, toxaphene, mercury, dioxin-like chemicals, PFAS, and we analyze for 39 different PFAS, and PCBs. The 2 that we sample every fish for is mercury and PFAS because we find it in every fish, unfortunately. The other 5 we will sample for if there's a reason to believe that might be in the fish, specifically a lot of the Great Lakes fish. We might be looking for the PCBs and the toxaphene and the selenium. Okay, so getting to the 2025 update. So we update our Eat Safe Fish guides regularly. We try to get them out every year with an update. Sometimes it's every couple years, depending on how much data we have to wade through to get our updated consumption guidelines. And these guides are updated for 2 reasons. First, they're updated to incorporate new data from new fish analyses. And the second reason we update them is maybe we have changes made to the guides based on emerging science. And so in these 2025 guides, we have both of these. We have new data that we looked at, as well as changing science that we use to base our consumption recommendations. As far as the new data goes, and remember the previous guides were 2023, so we had 2 years of data to look at. This included 330 new fish tissue data sets. Now, a data set is minimally 5 fish, upwards of 10 or more fish. So if you do the math on this, you're talking over 2,000 fish roughly were analyzed in these new guides. So using those data sets, we applied 988 new or updated guidelines to the 2025 guides. Almost 1,000 new guidelines or updated guidelines were applied to these guides. 68 water bodies had fish sampled for the first time. So Eagle does take recommendations or requests for water bodies to be sampled. So if there's a water body you want sampled, you can submit a request to Eagle, and they will take that into consideration when they're collecting their fish. Just so you know, there's about a 2-year lag period from when they get to go out there and get the fish to when we can actually make our recommendations. It's a long process to collect the fish, to process the fish, to get them to the analytical lab, to look at the data, to statistically analyze the data, and then to make our recommendation into the next publication. So it is a long process. Sometimes we can fast track it if we have an emergency event like a chemical spill or something like that. But generally speaking, it's about a 1.5 year in all process. So it's about 1.5 guides removed if you do make that request to Eagle. We now have over 600 water bodies across the state of Michigan. That's a pretty impressive amount. Michigan has 11,000 water bodies, so we have a lot of water bodies out there still that haven't been tested for fish, which again is why we have that statewide guideline if your water body's not in the guides. And then this is the big one for this year. So the PFAS do not eat advice. Previously, we had, doing my math quickly in my head, 33 water bodies had a do not eat for PFOS previous to this year. This year, we added 65 new water bodies with a do not eat for PFOS. And there's a couple of reasons that happened. The first reason that happened is we get new data. And so we got new data from certain water bodies that have never been tested before that may have been impacted with PFOS. And the other reason is we have emerging science letting us know that PFOS is a little more toxic than our previous guidelines would suggest. And that gets me into the next part of the slide, and that is what did we look at when it came to the emerging science for the 2025 guides? The first thing we looked at is that there is a continued understanding of the toxicity of PFOS. Our previous value, and I'll show you on the next slide, was adopted back in 2014. So that was about 11 years ago That's when we first started looking at PFOS in fish, and we had a kind of a nascent understanding of the PFOS toxicity. Now we know that PFOS is more toxic than we originally thought. I always say it's not really more toxic, it's as toxic. The toxicity hasn't changed. We're just realizing that it's worse to humans than we originally thought. And then the other part of this is we have a better understanding that PFOS is found pretty much in most people across the United States. And so what are, well, I'll skip. I'll wait to that slide to tell you the punchline on that one. So using this emerging science, we did update our 2025 guides, not only with new data, but based on this new understanding. So what did we do to the toxicity value? What is that first update? So when we looked at the previous toxicity value, which was 14 nanograms per kilogram per day. So what this means is that that's how much PFOS, I'm talking only about PFOS, how much PFOS you can ingest per kilogram of body weight per day and not have an increased risk of health effects to your body. So you could ingest 14 nanograms per kilogram of body weight per day, and you wouldn't expect to see any impact on your health. That was the value we adopted back in 2014. The 2025 guides use a new value of 2.89. So notice it's about 5 times lower. That means this is one of the tricky things. As the toxicity value goes down, the seriousness of that chemical goes up. It means you can't ingest as much without being, safe is a bad word, but without not expecting health effects. And this value was one that we adopted back in 2019. This is the one that drives the water consumption advisory with our comparison values that MDHHS uses. It's the one that drove our beef consumption advisories when we looked at some cattle that were impacted with PFOS. And so this value, you might think, oh, well, there's new values out there, right? EPA just released in, wrong button. Let me see, give me back. Oop. EPA just released in 2024 some new values that are lower than that 2.89. Well, here's what EPA looked at. So the EPA looked at what are the most sensitive health endpoints. Among those is hepatic, so impacts on your liver, your immune system, your cardiovascular, specifically a lot of that has to do with cholesterol levels, and developmental effects, and that includes something like low birth weights in infants. And they said those 4 are the most sensitive health endpoints of humans. So we chose a toxicity value, 2.89, that's driven by the immune system impact of humans. So we chose one of their 4 most sensitive endpoints. And then what we did, so what that means is if we're protecting for immune, most likely we're also protecting for the other sensitive health endpoints of PFOS. Then what we looked at is, sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button. Then what we looked at is how were these values derived? Now, there's a couple different studies you can look at. You can look at animal studies, and you can look at epidemiological studies. Epidemiological studies evaluate human impact from the chemical. Problem with epidemiological studies is that they aren't, for good reason, they aren't dosing people with a toxin. So you don't have that. You're asking them questions, you're looking at their exposures, you're making some levels of assumptions. Now, my wife's an epidemiologist, so I have to say they're very strong studies, they're very good studies, but at the same point, there are some levels of assumptions and confounders you make. The study we chose to use was an animal model. What that means is they actually dosed mice with PFOS and could find out what level of PFOS could they dose mice with before they started showing any health effects whatsoever. They can then use I guess it would be an interspecies conversion to give extra protection for a human because we are not mice. And so you have a really good model of causality from PFOS leading to those immune system impacts. And so we thought that's a very strong model to use when we're coming up with the value, and therefore we landed at that 2.89, still being a very defensible value. With that said, it's also only an order of magnitude different than what the EPA value that they came up with. So it's very consistent with what other states and federal agencies are finding. And the other thing is we're not going to stop. We're not going to be like, well, 2.89, we're there for life. We're going to keep looking. And if there are further studies that come out showing it is even a lower toxicity value, then we would obviously look at that and say, is that applicable to state of Michigan fish consumption as well? Okay, what is next? So that's the first part. That's how we lowered our toxicity value. The second thing we looked at was relative source contribution. So a lot of states, when they look at fish consumption, assume 100% of your PFOS comes from the fish you eat. This is what Michigan had previously. We had 100% relative source contribution. That means 100% of your PFOS in your bloodstream comes from the fish you eat. We know this is not true for a couple reasons. One, if you look at the N. Haynes data, which is the line graph to the left there, the green line is PFOS. And that 2017, 2018 data, that's the most recent publicly available data that we can use for this assessment. But if you look at that data, even though PFOS has been coming down since we've reduced its use in manufacturing in the United States, you're still talking almost 5 parts per billion in the average person 12 and up in the United States. So people have it in their blood. We know that. If you look at the right bar graph thing, this is from the Michigan PFAS Exposure and Health Study. This was our MyPES project that we did here at State of Michigan. We looked at impacted communities. That is true. We looked at Parchment and North Kent, and we looked at their blood, and 100% of the participants had PFOS in their blood. 100% had measurable PFOS in their blood. We know 100% of those participants weren't eating fish. Now, they were in impacted communities. So let's step back and look at the national numbers, which is that lighter blue underneath it. 99.6% of people 12 and over in the United States have measurable PFOS in their blood. So we know it's not just coming from fish. It's coming from somewhere else. Maybe your water, maybe your occupation, maybe your fast food wrappers. Who knows where it's coming from, but you're getting PFOS into your body. So if we say you can get 100% from your fish, that just doesn't make sense anymore. So we applied a relative source contribution, and we actually did some calculations where we looked at the N. Haynes data with the geometric mean of 4.25 parts per billion, and we did some back calculations. And what we came up with is 19% of your PFOS comes from just your being, okay? So this means you can attribute 80% of PFOS before you start hitting the dangerous levels to fish consumption. So what that really comes down to is when we did our calculations with our screening values, we reduced everything by 20% and said you're getting 20% other places, so you can only get 80% from your fish. And what that ends up leading to is this. These are the old, in the middle, the 2023 fish consumption screening values, and on the right, you see the 2025 fish consumption screening values. And a couple things to note here. What used to not go into effect as something we would mention as a driving contaminant until 9 parts per billion in the fish tissue now starts at 1.5 parts per billion in the fish tissue. It is hard to find a fish that doesn't have 1.5 parts per billion in its tissue. I'll tell you that right now. Also notice the do not eat used to be 300 parts per billion. It's now 49.6. So when I say we have more water bodies with do not eats due to PFOS, part of that is just due to the fact that we're a lot more strict now than we used to be. It's 6 times lower our different consumption categories than they used to be. Where this lines up with other states, you can see Michigan at the top. The middle column is 1 meal per month guidelines. Where do those start? And the right column is the do not eat guidelines. So Michigan previously was 75 parts per billion. We're now 12. We used to be 300 for do not eat. We're now around 50. Other states you can see are somewhat in alignment. Connecticut's very similar to us. Maine is similar to us. New Jersey is somewhat similar to us, as is Washington. Some of the other states are still following the Great Lakes Consortium values of 50 and 200. Great Lakes Consortium is releasing an updated document, or at least they have one circulating among member agencies with the recommendations that they drop. If that document is approved, I can't really say the specific numbers, but what I can say is it's going to be very similar to what Michigan has. So again, more and more states are adopting this level of around 50 for the do not eat being an appropriate value. You'll notice there are, in case you're curious, some of those states have a general population and a sensitive population number. Michigan just goes automatically to the sensitive. So we don't differentiate between a general population, which would be a adult male not in reproductive age versus a young female in reproductive age. We don't go along those routes. We just assume a pregnant person is the most sensitive. Therefore, we will protect everybody if we protect them. Okay. Just out of curiosity, so I was interested. So where do we look at when it comes to our contaminants? So this is the number of guidelines driven by each contaminant. You can see mercury is still the main driver across the state of Michigan, with 57% of the consumption guidelines still driven by mercury. 23% are driven by PFOS. PCBs are now third. They were second until the PFOS update. And then we have dioxins, DDT, toxaphene, and selenium rounding out the bottom 4 chemical contaminants. One thing I should point out, the asterisk next to this is a lot of those fish that were tested for mercury weren't tested for PFOS because it was before we started testing for PFOS. So if we went back and tested a lot of those for PFOS, we might find it in them as well. And PFOS might be the driving agent in some of those fish. It's just that we haven't gone back and had a chance to resample a lot of these. Good news is this year we are putting a push out there, working with Eagle, working with DNR, USGS, what's left of them, and some of our tribal agencies to get out there and collect Great Lakes fish, to do a big blast of the Great Lakes and say, what do our Great Lakes fish look like? It's been many years since we've collected some of these fish. PCBs, we know, degrade over time in ecosystems. So are they still the driver in Great Lakes fish? Or maybe PFOS is working its way up, or maybe Great Lakes fish are better than they were 20 years ago, which is what some of our data span. So hopefully we'll have in the next guide some great, and again, it'll be about a 2-year lag, but in the next couple guides, we'll have some great updates to the Great Lakes fish. So anyway, that's what I had for you. So I appreciate your time tonight, and I know there's going to be questions. One last thing I do want to say, so a couple things. I'll hit these questions because they're going to be asked. EPA does mention PFOS being carcinogenic. We did not see enough evidence for a mutagenic mechanism to be able to support that driving consumption guidelines at this point. If that gets further developed and we see more evidence pointing to that, then we would adjust the guidelines appropriately. We'd use a different type of screening value. What we use right now, I have a couple supplemental slides here. We use a non-cancer calculation to calculate our screening values. The cancer calculation is slightly different, so we would have a different value if we were to consider PFOS to be mutagenic. And then the other thing is EPA does recommend that that 5 PFAS are sampled for in every fish or in every edible tissue. And there's another 7 on their watch list. Michigan samples already for all 12 of those that the EPA is recommending. PFOS is the only one that we consistently find in fish. And when we do find it with the other PFAS analytes, it is always going to be higher and more sensitive than the other analytes. So what we found in all of our, tens of thousands of fish samples is PFOS is the driver. So even though EPA says there's 5 and there's another 7 you should look for, and we do look for them, it's PFOS. Something might change in the future, but for right now, PFOS is the only PFAS that really matters when you're looking at fish consumption. Okay, with that, I'll pause and take questions.
All right, Brad, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Marcus. I was curious on your comment about the E-State fish doesn't apply to commercial fisheries yet. And I'm not a recreational fisherman myself, but the fish that I do consume, I purchase at a market out of St. Ignace usually, and I know they get most of their fish out of Lake Huron and Lake Michigan. So I guess I figured they kind of applied, but your comment made me think maybe that's not the case.
It would be logical, Brad. It would be logical to say if they're catching fish out of Lake Michigan, I can open the guide to see out of Lake Michigan which fish are the best ones to eat. That's what I would do. Okay. This is designed for the recreator, but yes, also as a consumer, I think you're smart to say, let's take a peek at that guide and see what's coming out of Lake Michigan or Lake Superior, whichever lake it is.
All right, that's kind of what I was going at, but when you made that comment, it made me think that maybe I was doing it wrong. Thank you.
No, there's some sort of magical thing in the commercial fishers. All the PFAS leaves the fish when they catch it. It's amazing. So.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions?
I think something else, Sandy, I'll jump in and throw my own question out there because I know people have had a question on communication.
Yes,
and
I was going to say, my question was on
Harry can jump
how are
in
we
there.
telling people and where's the signage for this?
Exactly. Harry can jump in and tell you all about it, but I'll take it. I'll take this one for tonight, and that is we work with local communities and local health departments to provide the signage. So we have signage. We will give it to them. One of the problems with a sign is if you put up a sign and that sign can't be maintained in good shape and it falls into disrepair. And I don't know about you all, but I look at a sign that's falling off and rusty and broken, and I'm like, it must not matter anymore. That's old news because the sign would be new if it actually mattered. And so a disrepair sign sometimes is more of a detriment than a help in a community. And so what we like to do is work with community organizations, we work with local health departments, we work with townships that have the water bodies under their jurisdiction. As long as they have the legal authority to do so, we can provide them with signage with the intent that they will maintain the signs and keep them in good order. And if they see a sign that's been vandalized or something, call us up. We'll get you a replacement one to put on the shores. We just unfortunately don't have the resources to go around the state of Michigan and just do a blast of signs everywhere and maintain all those signs. Now, how we do communicate a lot of this is we do put out a press release when we have these updates. I don't know how many of you guys saw the media that we got this time around. I did. I lost count. I think it was 9 TV interviews. A couple of those went national. I did NPR interviews. I did a lot of radio interviews. So I am very happy with how widespread this was covered this year. I wish it was that way every year. But this year, I think it got a lot of attention because of the attention that PFAS is getting and the fact that we had a lot more guidelines because we changed our PFAS values.
Stacy, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, we're here in Holly, and we know that the mercury is #1 on our fish from the testing that was done. We know the PFAS, and we have PFOs, but we don't have any signage yet. And the people on the lakes, Bush and Rice in particular, are concerned, and we still have no signs. How do we go about getting signs?
That would be if you reach out to our Eat Safe Fish. I'm going to scroll up to reach out to our Eat Safe Fish coordinator. That's Carly Brown, and talk to her. Send her an email. She'll work with our community engagement teams. Our community engagement team helps to distribute the signs, get them out there, make sure they're placed properly, and make sure, like I said, a big thing is we need to have a community organization or group or something. And it sounds like you do that would be willing to put those signs up and make sure that they're maintained properly. But if you reach out to Carly, she can see if you've made that request before. She can see where that request is, and this is in the queue. Thought I had something else to add there, Sandy, but I forget now. It's slipped to me. I'll think of it.
Okay, is that it, Stacy? Can I ask a question?
Oh,
Stacy still got her hand up, but do you have another question?
Nope, no more questions.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'll jump in because real quick, Sandy, let me jump in because Stacy mentioned mercury, and that is one of the things too. So the good news about PCBs is they degrade over time. We're seeing lower levels of PCBs now than we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. That's the good news. The not so good news is that PFOS, as we all know, doesn't degrade rapidly in environmental systems. We are not sure how it accumulates in sediment and then is resuspended during storms or wave action. We're not sure of the half-life in fish. We know it's faster than humans, but we're not sure what it actually is in different species. It might be different lengths of time. So unfortunately, PFOS is not one of those that we expect to go away. It's going to be a developing problem, a persistent problem. And I thought of that with mention of mercury. Mercury is still, as long as we still have coal-powered plants in the world, we're still going to have mercury coming out of the atmospheric deposition and accumulating in our lakes and water bodies. And so mercury and PFOS, there's a reason we sample every fish for them because they're not going away. Unfortunately, their sources are still strong and they're showing up. Like I said, every sample, I'd be surprised if I saw a sample that didn't have some mercury or PFAS in it.
So can I unless a community calls and asks for a sign at a lake, a sign is not going to be put up there. There's not going to be notification there, right?
There are a couple exceptions to that. If we get a lake where we get very high levels, where we have a do not eat and we have concern, or we know it's a lake that's used for, let's say, youth fishing derbies or has a lot of fishing piers along it, we will work with local health and make a recommendation to them that you probably should put up some signs along this lake because we think this needs signage. So there are a few cases where we will step in and say, please, community group, please, local health, get some signage up on these lakes. Other cases, where we look at it, we're hoping that community groups will identify the risk and step to us and say, can you please help us provide signs in this area? And I think, Sandy, I think you're working with some of us on getting some signage in your area. Is that correct? Oh, you're muted, Sandy.
Rick has probably done more of that than I have, but we have been talking about that. But so that was going to bleed into the next question of, do you get any pushback from maybe towns that rely on tourism and fishing and how much they love their river action and they don't want these stinky "do not eat the fish" signs up there, what do you do then? And I'll let Rick ask the question after that.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in to add something, and then Rick, I'll turn it over to you. And that is, it's a no-win situation, honestly, when we put these guides out, because when we updated these PFOS guidelines, we had people on two sides of the fence. One side of the fence saying, you're not doing enough. We should have more signage. You should go lower. We should go all this way. We have another side of the fence saying you're ruining the fishing industry. You don't care about Michigan. You're scaring people. And it's really hard to strike that balance. And what I always like to say is, to me, okay, you look at it and say, we have 660 water bodies, or however many we have, 650 water bodies where we have chemical contaminants in fish, and we have recommendations limiting how much fish you can eat because of those chemical contaminants. And to a lot of people, that's scary. To me, as somebody who likes to fish, who likes to eat fish, who have kids that I like to go fishing with, I like that because I can look in this little pamphlet and say, state of Michigan actually looked in our lake. And you know what? We can eat fish out of here. It may only be 2 servings a month, may only be 4 servings a month, but I don't have to be scared that that fish is going to kill us by eating 1 serving because it was evaluated. They did the work to say, they meaning Eagle and DHHS and DNR and our other partners did the work to say that you can still eat fish. Just be aware that fish are going to have chemicals, and don't be scared to fish. Just know which fish you're eating. So that's the way I like to look at it, is that kind of middle ground of, yeah, we're identifying a lot of chemicals, but in a way, we're also saying, enjoy your waters. Go recreate. It's a great spot. It's a great thing to do. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I had some concerns about the signs that you're providing, and I've been working with Yost, and he's been really responsive and to the questions. But the first sign that he showed us had a little qualifier on it. It said, do not eat the fish, but enjoy swimming and recreation and boating in the water. And that's good for cases where your water body is rated for total body contact, but we have a lot of water bodies like the Rogue River in particular that's partial body contact, so you really wouldn't want to have a sign that says enjoy swimming when it's not rated for swimming. We also have a fishing place by the dam, and you certainly don't want to have boating by the dam. So there's that little piece.
Yeah.
I can see why you're putting it there, but it doesn't really apply to a lot of lakes and streams in Michigan, just because we have so many lakes that don't meet the bacteria the E. coli levels. And then
right.
We have a situation where above the dam at the Rogue River, I think pretty much all the fish that the different species that were sampled, were all on a do not eat the fish list. But if you go below the dam, the brown trout are still high, so you wouldn't want to eat those fish. But if you just have a sign that says do not eat the fish, there's a lot of people that fish for the migratory salmon that come up the river during the salmon runs, and you wouldn't want to discourage that. So it's almost like, we need to have some custom signs, that would be more indicative of the places, because I think the do not eat fish sign applies to above the river, but then above the dam, but it probably doesn't apply, it'd be do not eat the trout or something. I don't know, but I think we need to have a little bit of flexibility in the signage. And then
I agree, Rick. I'll jump real quick for your second point, but I agree. There are obviously the signs we make some of them are just generic for small community. They have a pond, put it in there, let people still canoe in your pond and whatnot. They aren't applicable, but that would be a great recommendation to bring back to the team. And you probably already have. If you're working with Yost is already bringing that back to the team about, can we do customized signs? And I'll tell you right now, and maybe, I don't know, Harry, you wouldn't be necessarily the person to talk to on this. Our health educator would be more, I guess, involved with that. But, the making of a sign is not a simple chore, unfortunately. So sometimes it's along those lines of turning it over to the local community and saying, you can create your own signs. And we've done that sometimes with local health and townships and saying, if you want to put a sign up, you can. Here's our recommendations on the lake. We'll help you. But if you want a DHHS sign, it's going to take about 6 months for us to be able to get it and manufacture and get it out there onto the lake. So sometimes we will also do temporary signs, which is just to put this up in the meantime while we wait to get some permanent signs to your location. But anyway, Rick, sorry, you had a second
I was
point.
going to say we have a long history of signs where you know, the community wanted signs about water contact and they came back gray on gray. So they're really, they don't strike you. I mean, they don't hit you. You know, you look at it and you don't really think it's any kind of a warning sign. So, you know, I think we have to have, you know, the community needs to buy into the fact that this is a serious warning to put up. The other question I had is a little more technical, and I'm trying to resolve this with Yoast right now too, is that, you know, the fishing advisory for the Rogue River extends for above the dam. And if you take that literally, that's all the way up to Grant. I mean, that's a long distance. And there's a lot of places to fish along that stream. I noticed there was another collection of 10 samples that's further upstream, and that was never used in any type of an advisory. It was done in 2019, and you know, I did my own calculations based on your table, and you know, the trout would be 1 to 2 meals per month. You know, if you fished above that particular spot, and you know, given the fact that the Rogue River is a natural scenic river, and it's fished heavily for trout. You know, I was wondering how you why didn't you use that data? You know, like you probably can't answer that right off the bat, but you know, I did find a set of data that was further upstream that was, you know, more indicating that the levels have went down, and it's outside of the Wolverine plume. You know, I think we all know that the Wolverine plume is what's causing it. So, you know, that's just observation.
I can definitely help, and I can't speak to those 10 fish why we didn't use that, but this goes to our partnership with the Fish Contaminant Monitoring Program, the Eagle program, and DNR. So we work with DNR's fish biologists, we work with Eagle's environmental biologists, and look and say what parts of the river are considered to be isolated for fish movement versus others. So I think it's the Rogue. I should know this better. Maybe one of my colleagues know this. I think it was the Rogue that was just broken up from 2 pieces to 6 pieces in these guides, because we were able to better classify that fish movement stopped within this section, and this section is not representative of this section. So we did relax a few do not eats in parts of, again, I think it's the Rogue River, where we were able to relax some of the do not eats because we realized those fish didn't move far enough to cause a do not eat advisory. So that is rivers are a really thorn in the side of the Eat Safe Fish program, because fish movement is so important, because you can't say just because you're 20 miles away, you're safe. I mean, there's, you know, one of the neat examples I just learned about was there was a walleye in Lake Erie that they tracked all the way up to Lake Superior. And they move. And so if you say, well, you know, because a lot of what we get is pushback on the Great Lakes. How can you say Southern Lake Michigan is the same as Northern Lake Michigan? Honestly, it's probably not. But as long as the fish can move freely back and forth, it's hard to make a protective recommendation. And so anyway, I'm getting on a tangent, but no, I agree with you, Rick. It's really all 3 departments working together saying, Eagle, what data do we have? So that could be a question for Eagle to know if they had that data.
I will double check. I think I'm pretty sure the Rogue River is split up just in 2 places, above the dam and below the dam. But
it might be the Rouge I'm thinking about now that I think about that.
I get those. The River. You just move the letters around a bit. And then the last question would be on tributaries. You know, the Rogue River has a number of tributaries that people fish in, and there's been no sampling of those. But are we concerned about those tributaries too, or?
I'd have to say how the wording is. Usually the rule is the tributaries up until a dam would count as the same restriction as that river itself. Likewise, rivers usually are treated as the Great Lake up into the first dam. Great Lake species are considered part of that. So I'd have to see if there's any specific wording for the Rogue River.
No, I think we really need to sit back and have a discussion about how this impacts the Rogue River, because you know, there's creeks like Stegman Creek that people, you know, fish for trout, and Rum Creek, and you know, the fish can move up and down, you know, the creek and into the tributary. So you know, if all those streams do not eat the fish, I mean, that's a lot of signs and a lot of communication to people. So
we may have you We may invite you guys to our CAG meeting
Well,
for that, but
yeah,
I want to get, Lynn's got a
yeah,
question here
okay,
too, so.
thanks.
Lynn,
Hi
now.
there. This is Lynn Knopf, and I am near Duck Lake in Muskegon County, right in between White Lake and Muskegon Lake. It's a 300-acre lake, and I've noticed it has not been tested for fish toxicity. It's hasn't made it. It's kind of flown under the radar, and I just wanted to kind of put it on your radar. There are 3 parks on the lake. A little over 50% of the shoreline is public park, and it is heavily fished. It's got one big state park on it. We have done some preliminary testing on the foam and the wells in the area, the water wells. We're getting hits on PFAS. So I just think that would be a good lake to include. I don't know who to contact, if you're the right person, or if you can point me in the
That
right
would be
direction.
it'd be Brandon Armstrong with Eagle. He's the one that takes requests. You said Duck Lake. What county was that? Muskegon? Or
It's Muskegon County. It's a drowned river
okay.
mouth right below White Lake.
Okay. I know there's several duck lakes that I have data from. I don't think I would have to look. I think there are UP duck lakes. But I'll check with our team and see if that is on the list. But yeah, Abby, you unmuted. Would that be probably Brandon's the best person to reach out to for that?
Yeah. Seems like this one's come up in conversation before, but Lynn, there's a form that we can fill out to request that lake be sampled. And so I'll see if I can find it, or Kelly can find it. One of us can drop it in the chat, because anybody who's got concerns about a specific lake can submit this. It doesn't have to come from staff. But then we can follow up and see if it's on his list for this year. And I'll look through my email and see if I've got his current list of sampling for this year, or if it needs to go on, because usually he plans out his whole year for sampling, because they're in the middle of sampling season right now. And then we'll see if this is already on it, because I seem to think that this one has been a topic of concern for a while. So I wondered if it might already be on the list.
Yep, I think I did fill out a form a while ago, but I'll go ahead and do that again and just see if I can get on somebody's radar with that.
And I'll jot a note, and if I can find some information tomorrow, I can shoot you a note on whether or not it made it onto the list for this year.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Abby.
I'd
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
that.
Thank you very much.
I have Daniel and then John, I think. Daniel.
Yeah, so I'll be real quick, because Rick was asking a lot of really great questions. But Marcus, that was really excellent. I really appreciate you taking the time to pull that all together and explain it to us. This is a notoriously difficult, nuanced thing to explain, that even though we're understanding the toxicity to humans better, that we're also understanding that we're all exposed to PFAS more broadly. Our understanding has improved, so it's more nuanced. And you mentioned there were a lot of good things that you and Rick were talking through there. So like the lakes, there's a chain of lakes on the Huron River that is actually more connected to the main stem of the river than some of the parts right below a dam that are right below that chain of lakes in terms of fishing. And so that's one of the situations where it's actually technically on a tributary, but it is very well connected, and the fish move in that whole area, so that the advisories obviously apply to that whole stretch. So that was just one example I was thinking of where the fish move, they swim.
Mm-hmm.
But the nuance of as we're learning more, that the advisories in some cases are being relaxed very specifically, versus this broader understanding. So we're understanding better how it's behaving in different species, where it is. So all of that is just refining our understanding. So the story is becoming more nuanced. It takes more effort to explain, but I appreciate all the work that you've done and that everybody has done on this. it's really fascinating to see, how it's progressing scientifically, and I'm glad that we can, get that information out to people that are fishing and potentially protect them.
Thanks,
Appreciate that, Dan.
Is that Joe that's got his hand up?
Yes, thank you. That's a great presentation. I'm learning a lot here, but I'm a very ignorant guy on fish. So the question is this: the certain fish like to, or they end up with more PFAS or mercury or whatever than other species, depending on where they live and where they grow, like the bottom of the water body or above.
That that is an interesting question because right now it's kind of unknown. PFAS does not seem to bioaccumulate like other chemicals where the top big predators have more than the small game, these small prey fish. What we see with PFAS is it's kind of evenly spread around. In fact, sometimes some of the small prey fish like bluegill and rock bass will have higher concentrations than some of the big predators. So we're still learning that, why certain species like, catfish, carp, we know they're going to get into the PCBs at the bottom of the river. Top predators, we know they're going to live long enough to accumulate mercury into their tissues. PFOS just doesn't pass through the food chain in the same way or in a predictable way. So that's a great question. It's hard to predict, which is one of the reasons why, we've heard before the concept of statewide PFOS guidance. It's difficult to do that because of a couple of reasons. One, the sources are so site specific to PFOS. It's really source driven in a lot of these lakes, not like mercury where a lot of it is atmospherically driven. And then how it reacts in the species tends to not be fully understood yet. One thing I do want to point out, sorry, Sandy, one more second. Some of the chemicals you can reduce by how you clean and cook your fish, like PCBs, trim away the fatty tissue, grill the fish. You're going to get rid of PCBs and you can eat, or at least some of the PCBs, and you can eat twice as many as our guidance suggests. And we have a little ×2 next to it. Mercury and PFAS are found in the muscle tissue of the fish. So no matter how you cook it, no matter how you clean it, you cannot double your serving size. So again, one of the other reasons why PFAS and mercury are tested for in every fish.
Well, this has been fascinating. I got to say, you do a really good job at explaining it to those of us who aren't that smart. And you think you've got it bad. I was on a call with Iowa who talked about PFAS in the Mississippi and trying to figure out how to manage that. So I think our tributaries are nothing compared to the Mississippi at this point that nobody's even thought of yet. So thank you so much, Marcus, for coming and sharing all this with us. I do think as a COG, I'm hearing people have a lot of concerns about, again, notification, making sure people have the information, especially people maybe that are visiting from out of town. That's who I worry about. People that are coming into the state that are visiting that have no clue that that's there. So I think if people can think about that in their own communities on how we're going to help get signage and keep signage there, let's do that. So
Sandy, one last thing. I'm going to jump away from fish just to give you guys a small announcement. So as of August 4th, I'm actually shifting over to MDARD from DHHS. I'll still be working on PFAS. I'll still be working on chemical contaminants, but I'll be with MDARD instead of DHHS. So hopefully you'll still see me around, but just looking at the agricultural side of things and bringing them stuff. So just FYI.
All right, stay tuned. Now
Yeah,
we know who to call about that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, you do. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we tell them, Sandy, is in the forever family, you don't get to leave. You can change roles, but you don't leave.
You don't leave. That's right.
No, always come back.
All right. Okay. Do you want to quick do some subcommittees? I don't know how many subcommittees have met, so maybe we can run through them. Website review subcommittee. Did you guys meet?
We did have a meeting today and didn't have a lot of specific things we talked about, but in general, we were discussing some aspects of Rick's initiative with the PFAS Awareness Week, but also one of the things that we would like to ask for support or help from committee members is whether or not looking at the website portion, consumers products page, which has a number of links to some very good other sites that talk about PFAS in different consumers products and that kind of thing. I know Rick says he recommends the PFAS Central as a very good website for something like that. So if you guys are aware of any other things that are there or that should be there, if you could pass that along to either me or Kelly, and we can make some additional recommendations. I was also wondering if anybody is aware of websites that identify products that we all have in our homes or potentially have in our homes and have been exposed to for a number of years that we should be thinking about replacing because of their potential historic PFAS contamination. And I guess that's something that I personally am going to see if I can find any information, but if somebody's already aware of that, if you could also pass that along, that would be helpful as well.
All right. If people have those ideas, I do know Environmental Working Group has a good list. And I also know a group, website, Save the Store, I think it's called, Mind the Store, something like that. I'll get it to you. They have a really good website that grades companies on the use of PFAS and gives higher grades to those companies that have gone PFAS free. So I can send you guys both those.
All right, that'd be great.
Resources.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I can always count on the website committee for meeting. They always do. All right.
Yeah, we could always use more members. We meet at 4:30 on the Tuesday of today,
right.
like today. So
You could be part of that team that always comes through for us. Let's see. Preventative measures. Is anybody meeting on that? I think since we lost Dave Wynn, I don't know if people are meeting on that one.
Sandy, I don't think anybody has met with that one. Or
Okay.
Membership. We also did not meet for membership this month.
Okay. Engaging the public. I don't think that subcommittee ever got going. All right. So I'm going to hand it over now to Abby for MPART updates.
Yeah. Okay. Some updates for today. So we do have a couple new sites that have gone live, including this one here in Wayne County, the 34136 Myrtle Street and 3850 Howe Road in Wayne, Michigan, in Wayne County. Also the 4724 West River Drive, Comstock Park, the Romulus Distribution Center, and Consolidated Packaging in Monroe. And a number of these were BEAs that have come through. I don't have a ton of information on them myself, but they are up on as new MPART sites on the website. So please check them out there. I think we've got all of that information already live. The other things to just kind of be aware of, we had some questions called into play for some of the data for Cadillac. So we are putting together in the final stages of putting together what we're calling a comparability study. We're looking at, for the area of Cadillac, we're looking at doing potentially up to 20 different homes, looking at doing at the kitchen sink sample as well as at the outside spigot, and looking at doing an Eagle test, a Cyclopure test, and a third-party lab, probably Merit Labs or something like that, and doing those 3 tests side by side so we can see what those comparable results look like. Also looking at, does it make a difference if you take the sample at the kitchen sink versus the outside spigot? Sometimes people don't really understand if they have a filtration system on their house or do they have a water softener or whatever. How much of a difference does that give us in results? And then we're also going to do a couple of homes where we're going to take and do an initial flush, take that, do the first sample right after you turn on the spigot, and then we'll do a couple homes where we actually flush it inside the house for 3 minutes and then take another sample. And so we want to see if there's any, are we getting any artifacts from inside plumbing? Are we getting any artifacts from sampling it inside to outside? And do you get any much differences between the various sampling methodologies and labs? And so we're calling this a comparability study. I'm not anticipating huge differences, but we do want to see what the information shows us, what the data shows us, because we did have at least 4 houses in the Cadillac area that were significantly different between Eagles results versus Cyclopure results. I think those were anomalous. I don't think those represent all of the Cyclopure results, but we want to understand better, and you can only do that with better data and better information. So this comparability study is in the final stages, and we will be talking to the community more about the next steps.
Abby, thank you for doing that. I know there, you know, communities already are a little unnerved when you find that you've got contaminated water. And so mine's going crazy places sometimes when you have these differences in testing. So I think that's a really good way to kind of get down to the bottom of what exactly is going on, if anything is going on. So thank you for doing that. I know it's a lot more time and effort on you guys' part, but I think it's a good step and will help other communities have faith in what's going on. So thank you.
Yeah, and I should say that we're going to go back to the homes that had, you know, we've gotten tons of samples from Cyclopure self-test kits around the city of Cadillac, but we do have some with some apparent exceedances. And so we're going to go back to those homes and resample them and see if with the exceedances, do we get a difference? And then we're going to look at even a few of the homes that had just detections, and then 1 or 2 of the homes that just had non-detects, and kind of get that gradient of concentrations, as well as, you know, have the side-by-side comparison of the different analytical methods, and just our sampling. It's actually really a difference in sampling collection more than anything. So we will let you know what that looks like. The other other thing that we're working on, one of the other things that we're working on is we've got some money left over from an EPA Emerging Contaminant Small and Disadvantaged Community Grant. We had used the first part of the money to look at doing proactive drinking water sampling around Blair Township up in Grand Traverse County and at the city of Jackson. City of Jackson, we had, you know, a lot of industrial areas that we were concerned about potentially having PFAS, finding PFAS. Blair Township was down gradient of a fire training area that we didn't have a lot of information on, but we were concerned about. Neither of those had significant amounts of contamination or elevated, you know, source areas that were discovered. So we, you know, have finished up those sampling efforts and we'll be moving on. So we do have additional funds left there. So we're going to look at using those remaining funds and seek approval from EPA to do some proactive sampling around some of our plating facilities that we still have in the state. There's quite a long list of plating facilities that are either, most of the mom and pop plating facilities, you know, have been out of business or whatever, and we don't always have good information about them. So we're hoping to do focus on that for some of our next steps and some of that remaining funds. And again, using it to do what we would call a public health investigation, not doing environmental investigations, but actually just looking at the drinking water wells around these facilities, making sure somebody's not drinking contaminated water when we, you know, just haven't had the time to get to those environmental investigations. So that would be the focus for this. So that's that. Do we have another slide, Kelly? Okay. And look at that, Kelly's even got the dates all right. So, all right.
Stacy and Lynn had their hands still up. I think they have already asked their question about the fish. But if you have new questions, Stacy or Lynn, let me know. But Joe just put his hand up, so go ahead, Joe.
I was happy to hear that you got some unspent money. My wife had a very good question. How many cosmetics she should be careful about?
Oh, that's a
All of
great
them.
question. All of them. Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff that we use, even some of the creams, it's really hard to know because they're not labeled, right? We just don't
Right.
know. But I would think a lot of the foundation primers that they have out there are probably all going to have PFAS in them. So, yeah, great question. But I don't have, yes, thank you, Kelly. We
Jocelyn's got her hand up.
we do have a consumer products page, and I thought we just updated this with some additional information, but there is some stuff here specifically for websites that have stuff on either EWG or PFAS Central that have specific products, associated with the cosmetic industry. So you can look and see what have they looked at to see who's PFAS free. There's a whole list of PFAS free cosmetics, home textiles. There's stuff out there, but we got to be smart shoppers because it is not labeled. So go ahead, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I did just want to add that another really good trick is like waterproof mascara, things like that, things that are labeled like waterproof, and especially like mascara, anything with the eyes, because that's like kind of direct contact into your body, where dermal is on your skin, so you have your skin barrier as a layer kind of protection for you. So if there's one to like look out for, it'd be like mascara that's listed as waterproof and anything you put on your eyes. So, but Abby does make a really good point that our labeling laws in this country are pretty weak. So hard to really know for sure.
Can I ask a big favor? How
Sure.
to access that exact page?
Oh, sure. Kelly can go back there. Go on to the MPART website. Just
Right.
type in MPART and then go to the tab at the top that says Resources for Residents. So on the left-hand side, there's a page that says Resource for Residents. And then under there, it says Take Action. And then under the Take Action page, there's the consumer products one right in the middle.
Okay.
So we've tried to update it, but if Sandy or anybody else has got additional pages that have come online or that need to be there, let's add them in here so we can be complete, because there's some good stuff out there, and we haven't done the testing.
The issue is not just like what we take in or put on or expose ourselves to. It all ends up in landfills at some point, and it's just becoming this vicious circle. So Mike Jury's put in things. John Vreese, look at this. We are so smart. Everybody's got links here for us. So go in the chat, Joe, and you will also find a bunch of links that we should probably add in there. Ask and ye shall receive here. That's what we do at the MPART COG. So
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So we have 10 minutes to spare. I think this was a really good meeting. We're not meeting in August. We're going to meet in September. But that doesn't mean we can't start working on that PFAS week now. So think about if you have some time that you can help with either sponsorship or content. And I really think especially content, if people can think about their own communities and how they can elevate those communities. I'm looking at you, Southeast Michigan, Detroit area, Connie Boris. Yes, I'm looking at you and Teresa. And some other communities here that we can get on board. And Geopan, I will commit for Geopan that we will also help with this. So with that, everybody go have a good rest of your summer, and we will see you in the fall. All righty.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.